Hello, beautiful women. Welcome, welcome. We are going into my top 10 tips for you to deepen intimacy in your relationship. This is especially great for people who are in long-term relationships, but even if you are single or you're dating or you're just coming into relationships, this is still going to be really relevant for you. And I want to say that the reason I'm making this video is because, well, a few reasons, but one of the main reasons is because this is one of the top searches of women online when it comes to sex, love, intimacy, and relationships. The question of how can I deepen intimacy in my relationship? And so if you're here watching this video, you're very much not alone. There are millions of women who are Googling this, and it's because it's really important to us, and it's really important to me too. I am a woman's somatic sex and relationship coach. I do somatic integrative trauma work. I do pelvic health work and women's embodiment. I specifically call it integrated female embodiment, where I combine science, somatics, sexuality, and spirituality for women to be as deeply embodied as they can, and intimacy is a huge factor in that, right? So we're gonna go over 10 tips, and I have my journal in front of me because I knew for this one I might forget. And I'll try to be as clear as possible, but I also want to give you some juicy details on like each of these as well, because I think some of them require a bit of context. The first one is something I call initiating oxytocin moments. Okay, so oxytocin is the hormone of love, of touch, of connection. It is especially important to women in the female body. Estrogen and oxytocin work with one another. So for example, if we are in our reproductive years and we are ovulating, when our estrogen peaks, our oxytocin is going to raise with that as well. We often see a lot of things online about dopamine detox, reset your dopamine. It is important, but that is a bit more important for male bodies. Oxytocin is going to be a bit more important and relevant for female bodies, and then they also kind of interplay with one another. So when I say initiating oxytocin moments, I mean don't save intimacy for just the bedroom. I like to say let it melt like honey through your everyday life, right? Because if we save intimacy for just the bedroom, oftentimes we never get to it, especially if we are living a busy life, if we're working, if we're studying, if we're parents, and we're like, I'll save it till the end of the day, and then the end of the day comes and you're tired. So use it as nourishment, as fuel, as connection throughout the day. That can be a 5-minute cuddle break. It can be coming behind your partner and holding your hands and grabbing them as they cook. It can be being on the couch with one another for 5 minutes at the end of the day and touching each other's face and looking into each other's eyes and saying, how do you feel? How was your day? Tell me about it. I'm here. I'm listening, right? So initiating that. It can also be moments of like, I'm going to slap your butt, or I'm going to come up behind you and pull your hair. And yes, a lot of women like men to initiate this, but I am someone who is going to initiate just as much as the man in these oxytocin moments, and that's because a lot of men are very in their head, they're in their mission, and this isn't just, yes, this is speaking to like masculine and feminine teachings, but it's also speaking to the male versus female brain. I am often going to be the one who is going to be like, ooh, I'm feeling like I need touch. I'm feeling like mental isn't enough right now, and I need to bring in something else. And as I bring that in, I'm going to open it up to my partner as well, right? So don't wait for the initiation. Initiate those moments yourself. You are going to feel so much more filled up from that. The second thing is, this is actually a video that I could do for another topic on specifically the topic of being magnetizing, but I want to bring it in here as well, and that is being an open, curious, non-judgmental space for my partner to feel safe, to freely be himself in. That means I am going to be a safe space to listen to his processes, to hear what he feels scared of, to to celebrate what he feels ashamed of, to encourage what he's not sure of, right? For that to happen, it means I have to be really empowered in myself as a woman so that I can hold the experience of my partner, and vice versa, right? And so for me to stay in this, because this requires a softness, I feel like I'm open to what you're bringing to me. I'm curious of what you're saying, and as you say that, I'm gonna not be judgmental. I'm gonna be celebratory. I'm gonna be understanding. I'm gonna ask questions and be here with you as you express yourself to me. That is intimacy, and that is very magnetizing too, I will tell you that. But again, this isn't what it takes. There are moments where I am not in a place for this. Like, I'm like feeling hard, I'm feeling tough, rough around the edges. It's like a difficult day, there's a lot on my mind, and maybe I'm not available for that. So then what would I do? I would tend to my own self and need and resourcing in that moment, to be able to do that. And of course, all of these things are vice versa too. And this is a great video to share with your partner if you're a woman, whether your partner's a woman or a man, doesn't really matter, so that you can bring these tips to them as well, so that they can be on the other end of it too. But the next thing is, this is foundational. This is absolutely foundational, and that's filling up your own cup. Somatically, we are beings that require connection. So there is a level of codependence that we all have on one another, and that's okay, and that's healthy. But there's also a part of us that can become very enmeshed and codependent in a way that feels unhealthy and feels heavy. And also that's when it starts to feel like passion lacks oftentimes as well. And so what I notice is like, and the other reason why we tend to do this is because we live in a culture that, monogamy is the only way, and that means our partner is somehow this replacement for God or source or the divine, and they need to be your best friend, and they need to be your passionate lover, and they need to be your safety, but also your excitement. They need to be the parent, they need to be the provider. Like, it's so many things, and inevitably there will be disappointment because it's just really unrealistic oftentimes. And so there are a lot of moments where maybe there's something happening in my life or with my partner, and yeah, I could bring it to them, but I'm like, is this something to bring to my partner, or is it something to bring to my female friends, to my sisters? Is it something to bring to my mom? Is it something to bring to my coach or my therapist? Is it something that I can go outside and just tell the trees and tell the river and pray about, having places to fill our own cup in a lot of different ways is going to be really important. Like, that means having your own passions, having your own hobbies, having friends that you can go to, even if, obviously family too, but if family is, some people don't have that as well, then having friends, having community, going to classes, learning on your own, developing on your own, and then being able to be this full cup and bring to another. That doesn't mean every single day, all the time. Inevitably, there will be moments where you are lacking emotionally, mentally, and they are a bit more full, and they can help you, and vice versa. But as a general rule, there's overflow when we come with full cups versus I need this, and it gets messy. The next thing is prioritizing novelty. If you've ever read the book by Esther Perel, Mating in Captivity, this talks about this brilliantly. But there is this sort of, and we see it in a lot of movies and romance novels and whatever. It's like the man that's safe and the provider, and then the man that's kind of the bad boy, but there's passion and there's like intrigue and there's I shouldn't but now I need to, and that builds desire. And so what happens sometimes in long-term relationship especially is that maybe you have settled down with this person that feels safe and a provider, but it's like, okay, all of a sudden, why is there less sex? Why is there less passion? So if we can find ways to bring novelty into relationships throughout time, then this is going to help to deepen not necessarily just intimacy, but like passion and excitement as well. And I also will say, and this is again great video for another for another video. But relationships naturally go through cycles. Everything is a reflection of nature, of the feminine, of life and death. And so the phases of a relationship that feel more passionate or feel more honeymoony versus they feel more like a power struggle versus they feel more like a lot of stillness, a lot of decay versus we're kind of building back up again. It tends to be cyclical. This is super normal, so it's okay to have moments where you feel less passionate, less turned on. And sometimes it's just a moment of letting that be. And in other ways, it's like, how can we initiate novelty? Whether that's, okay, once a week, we're gonna have a 2 to 3 hour sex date, intimacy date, where he brings an idea and I serve him that week, and I bring an idea, and vice versa, you know what I mean? Or it doesn't even need to necessarily be sexual. It can be trying, like my partner and I did a massage course together this year. Last year we did a freediving course, so learning something new together, that's novelty. If you're in a non-monogamous relationship, which I am, like, novelty can be exploring with others together or apart, etc. So taking some initiative for that can be really beneficial. The next one I will say is being healthy in a lot of ways. So prioritizing movement and exercise, because that's going to be huge for libido. Prioritizing your hormones, because hormones have an effect. You know, our estrogen and progesterone are exactly what have an effect on our libido. So being able to live a natural lifestyle, organic, whole foods diet, a lot of movement, a lot of oxytocin with yourself. So self-massage and touch and dance and sensuality and connection with earth, all of this is going to be healthy. Whatever your go-to method of mindfulness, of tuning in, so maybe that's a yoga class, maybe that's a run, maybe that's a swim in the ocean, etc. Maybe that's walking, taking your hot girl walk, whatever it is. But prioritizing your health, and I haven't done a lot of videos on this yet because I'm just getting started, but I work with a lot of women who struggle with endometriosis, PCOS, vulvodynia, vaginismus, and so this will kind of go into, I'm looking at my list, the next two that I'm going to mention here as well. But starting to tend holistically to these aspects of ourselves can have an effect on intimacy, obviously, because if you're someone who's experiencing vaginismus, which is a chronic tightening of the vaginal muscles, then this is something to start to look into. The approach that I take with women is, why does your body not feel safe to open? There's a lot of reasons that we don't feel safe. A lot of them aren't our fault. There are ways we can be empowered to make changes over that. So when it comes to this, like, that could be like hiring a coach or taking a program or a course or a training, finding holistic or ceremonial methods that are going to help to tend to these, like also vulvodynia, inflammation of the vulva tissue. Like your vulva tissue is very sensitive. It's the most sensitive tissue that we have, and it's angry for a reason, or it's hurt for a reason, or at the core of it, it's speaking to you for a reason. So can we slow down and start to learn to speak the language of our pelvis? And this is also a lot of the work that I do with women through meditation and dance and movement and massage, of how can we slow down enough to be empowered over our body and start to speak its language, right? That's what embodiment is. Can we follow the inner guidance of our body rather than culture, rather than religion, rather than this person, rather than this memory and this trauma, etc., 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 right? The next one is checking our conditioning, and I think this is just coming in because what I notice, I work with clients that are and students that are monogamous and non-monogamous, and what I notice with a lot of monogamous couples is they get into relationships and they assume everybody does monogamy the same, and then they're very disappointed when their partner that they just got into a relation with hurts them based on, like, oh, well, he was following a model on Instagram and he liked her photo and he wasn't supposed to do that. And then I asked, did you tell him? Did you have an agreement? Well, no, he's just supposed to know. But nobody owes that to us. Nobody owes that to us ever. If you want to make those agreements in your relationship, that means it needs to be a conversation between you and your partner that's agreed upon. And if that hasn't happened, when somebody breaks that, it's a boundary that you haven't set. It's something you haven't communicated. It's a desire that you haven't spoken, and that's your responsibility. And so the check your conditioning is, for example, check what a monogamous relationship is to you versus your partner, because it might not be exactly the same. And there needs to be communication and therefore intimacy in this, to understand that we have different upbringings, we have different culture, we have different religion, we have different trauma, we have different memory, we have different bodies and relationships, and therefore it's not the same for everyone. So if we can start to be open-minded and curious and non-judgmental about our partners in this, then we can start to create very conscious containers with them that work for both of us, right? And that we can grow and expand into. The next one is a big one, which is trauma. Special place in my heart, because for me, like, I think when you're somebody who has studied trauma and somatic trauma and the effects of trauma on the body, and there's so much of the time where I, like, students come to me or clients, or I'm just talking to a friend or a peer, and I'm hearing them and I'm like, it's the trauma, it's the trauma, it's the trauma. I love you so much, and that's exactly what it is. And you know, it's said that, like, trauma isn't the event itself, but how we respond to it afterwards. And what happens, like, to put it, like, very simply, is that the safety that you had in your body changes as a result of trauma. And therefore, even though that event, or with complex trauma, multiple events where you had too much of something or not enough, it will affect the present, and therefore it must be healed in the present, right? And so for so many of us who struggle with intimacy blocks, where it's like, oh my gosh, I have this beautiful partner and they're amazing, but somehow I can't relax into pleasure, somehow I can't get excited, somehow my libido is still down. Oftentimes this is what needs to be addressed, and that's why I am so passionate about somatic trauma approaches, because we are creating shifts in the body to relearn safety after trauma. And when we can relearn safety, that's going to have the biggest effect as women on intimacy and pleasure. Because especially with pleasure, especially with orgasm, it's totally dependent on our parasympathetic nervous system, right? What happens with trauma is oftentimes we struggle with that. We get stuck in freeze, we get stuck in fight or flight, and we want to be able to, through the body, find safety, to enter parasympathetic states, to feel more deeply intimate, to feel like our body can actually reach deeper states of pleasure and orgasm and connection as well. And I will say, like, to go on from that, another one is emotional tending. And so what I say with this is, like, having moments with your partner or with yourself to tend to your emotions. Emotions and feelings are different, by the way. So, like, emotions and feelings, emotion is, I feel happy. So then I would ask, how does the happiness feel? Where do you feel the happiness? Okay, I feel it in my chest. It feels like light, and it feels yellow, and I can feel it, like, permeating out, like that's somatic work too. And being able to not suppress our emotions, but not have them be so, because suppression, which a lot of people do, especially a lot of men, this can create eventually, like, outbursts of anger or rage. It can create dis-ease and illness, right? And then with women, sometimes that happens, or other times it's like there's so much emotion that it's constantly kind of merging into everyday life, and instead of seeing through our intuition and our deeper guidance system, it's kind of like the force behind how we're making decisions in our life, and it feels really shaky, because sometimes our emotions aren't actually necessarily our truth. They're real in that moment, but sometimes they're connected to our mind and the fear, and versus, like, what is deeply felt in the body, or the intuition or the soul or the spirit. So I do a lot of this work with clients, and I have a somatic dance for female embodiment course. It's a library of somatic dance practices for healing, specifically for this. Like, okay, take 5 minutes at the end of the day and move your body in a way that you're able to communicate what you're feeling, as if you can't use words. Okay, you're feeling guilt in your body. Okay, move your body and show me what that guilt feels like for you. Things like this. This is how we tend to our emotions. This is how we liberate them. It's not necessarily a release. I need to release this bad feeling. We're so obsessed in the West with getting rid of pain, suppressing symptoms, and getting rid of what we think's bad by releasing it. Release trauma, release trauma. We actually are integrating our experience where we are expanding our nervous system's capacity to hold more, right? It's not about I'm calm all the time. It's I can stay connected to myself through life's beauty and pain. And when I get disconnected, I have the tools to come back and resource myself. And that's going to have a huge effect on how we can then come to our relationships and our intimacy. That's a way that we fill our own cup. And it helps a lot if we have a coach for that. This one's like kind of a combo, and they're like two little rules that I have. Or one's a rule and one's a tip. Okay, so there's one rule, it's like the 4 out of 10 rule. So if you are like 0, you're totally emotionally neutral, your partner's totally emotionally neutral, and then 10 is I am so, like I can't even see straight, I am so sad or angry or raging. If you're anywhere between a 0 and a 3, it's a good time to have a conversation about repair or something difficult or stating a desire or a need. If you're at 4 through 10 or beyond, do not have these conversations because you will not be able to think logically about them. And that's okay, but it's just the truth. 0 through 3, we're in our prefrontal cortex. We can make logical decisions, right? 4 through 10, we are in this limbic part of the brain where we literally just can't. Or if like you are a 2 and your partner's a 6 and you're trying to communicate that with them and you're struggling to understand why they're struggling to meet you there, check and consider where they might be, or maybe ask them. And if you're a 0 or a 3, that's a good time. It's a good time, especially with repair stuff. And the last one I'm going to say is consideration. And I think that being a beautiful partner is deeply considering the other person. And I think sometimes, and I get this, right? We have, feminine beings, we have this deep void and yearning and desire inside of us for more. It's like this eternal void of blackness and love, and it's just there, and it just is. And so sometimes we get really caught up in, and also this comes with conditioning of like, this is what a man should bring to you. He should be able to do these 5 things, and you need to get this from him, and and sometimes I'm just like, okay, but what can you bring? What of yourself do you want to offer? How do you want to connect and communicate? And in doing so, that in itself is magnetizing, and you receive back tenfold. Instead of, I'm going to save it until they give it to me, and it needs to be like this amount, and if it's not that amount, I'm going to like be really mad, but I'm not going to actually say I'm mad. I'm just going to pretend I'm going to... That's the girl, but that's not the woman. And I get it, because sometimes I go there and I get pissed off and I'm not controlling my emotions, and life is messy and no judgment, and it's okay. But deep connection in my relationship, and this is not just for my primary partner, it's for friends, it's for family, lovers, whatever, is like, I'm just a conduit of love, and I'm coming with that as the authentic love being that I am, powerful, soft, erotic. And what I will receive back is going to be abundant, tenfold, 100 times, whatever. And if it's not, I know how to set my boundaries, and I know how to go, and I know how to have conversations, and I can resource myself, and I have friends, and I can go there, and it's okay too. Yes, being soft and being tough with ourselves simultaneously is really good. So these are my top 10 tips. Maybe I should start to make timestamps for my videos, but if you have any questions about these, please let me know. I would be happy to answer. I'd be happy to go deeper, make suggestions for me for future videos. And thank you so much for watching.